Hi there, this is Madhav from the future. I quickly wanted to say that after recording this tutorial, obviously it's been a bit long. I am a hypocrite, I did not stay concise, but the good thing is I left timelines. So in the video, you can see that there are different sections. For most people, you probably don't want to watch the entire thing. You can figure out, well, do I know what domain names are? Do I know what hosting is? Just go to the section that you want, and you can look at the description to see, which sections there are. So hopefully this helps you. Hi there, this is Madhav, and this is a literally starting from scratch tutorial on how to edit your own HTML templates to make a website. This is, among many other ways, one way to make a website, and I keep getting questions about it, so I just thought I'd make this video. And when I say starting from scratch, I literally mean I will explain every single basic word, because I don't like when people use fancy words, so that's what you can expect. If you're wondering whether this tutorial has the information you want, well, good luck for you. I made a quick overview of what I'm going to be going over, all of this stuff right here. So if you already know the answers to some of these questions, then this tutorial is not for you. I will try to be concise, though I have to tell you that my main priority is make sure I define everything. So it's not me looking down on you, but I do want to make sure I cover all the questions here. So let's get started. First question is actually not what is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It is instead, what is a custom HTML template website used for? In simple terms, it's used to make websites where you go down to the very, very, very basics of the page and you decide to code every single thing yourself, including what is the text here? What does this button link to? What is the image I want to put in here? How many number of portfolio items do I want here? Etc., etc., etc. Every single detail you have to put into the page, and you do that by editing some code. So this is one way to make a website. There are definitely other ways. So for example, if you want a very easy way and you don't mind paying, then you can always go to wix.com. You might even get Wix not in French, so that will probably be helpful for you. You can also go to other places like Squarespace. All of these tools exist to help you make your website in a more, let's say, drag and drop fashion, like, hey, drag in an image over here, or add a button over here, or add a link over here, so you don't have to work with code. Now, again, if you want to do this, it's simpler, but you have to pay more. If you want to do this, it can be free. It is definitely less expensive, but it's a little bit more complicated. So if you want to figure out how to do this, then this is the tutorial for you. So with that out of the way, first question, what is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? I guess one answer is I could define the acronyms for you. HTML, it stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Wow, that sounds weird, that sounds bizarre. Don't worry, it's not too bad. What a markup language really is, it's not code actually, it's just a formatting language. I'll give you an example. I know many of you might have used some kind of app where if you type in these kind of stars, these asterisks, then the text in the middle is bolded. This is an example of what markup means. Markup is just when you put in certain symbols in your writing and it has a meaning. What do I want to do here? So for example, if I put 2 stars around a word, then I want to make it bold. Looks like you can do that on WhatsApp. So if you didn't know that, well, there you go. That's how you bold messages on WhatsApp. Anyways, hypertext markup language, HTML, it's like a markup language in that you're putting in specific symbols to, get specific properties. You're putting in specific symbols to make the website look a certain way. And instead of, doing that in a WhatsApp message, you literally have a lot of text that just has the writing that tells the website, that tells the browser, say Edge browser or Chrome browser, here's what the website looks like. I'll give you a more concrete example. So let's say in WhatsApp, I want to bold something, then I do bold, and I'll bold some text in a WhatsApp message. If I want to tell the Edge browser, here is the HTML, the hypertext markup language to bold something, instead of doing the asterisks, instead of doing the stars, I use this format. So you see here, you have like these things are called tags. They're surrounded by the less than and greater than sign. And you just put in a strong tag on both sides. And over here, you have like a slash here to show that it's a closing tag. So just like, this means bold the text in the middle, well, this also means bold the text in the middle. It's just a different formatting language. So that's what HTML is. Now, if you go to any website and you right-click on it, you'll see a button that says Inspect. You can press Control-Shift-I, usually Command-Shift-I. If you're on Mac for whatever reason, I don't know why you'd be on Mac. You could press one of those things and it will pop up this fancy, weird-looking window. But you can see here, you have some similar elements as to what I just showed you with the strong tags. All of this weird stuff, you can see here doc type HTML. This is an HTML document. It just basically has a bunch of those tags that I just showed you, a bunch of those specific notations where, just like you could put in these asterisks, instead in HTML you have all of these tags. And the browser will then go and read those tags and it will figure out, okay, here is the content of the website. So hopefully that gives you a sense of what HTML is. It's kind of like the basic structure of a website. It is used with something called CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. As you can imagine from the style sheets, they have something to do with style and design and visuals. So the HTML is kind of like the raw structure of a document. It'll do just the basics, maybe put a heading here, put some text here, put a link here, but it won't give it, the exact right font that I want. It won't give it the exact right color that I want. It won't say, put exactly this much space between this piece of text and this piece of text. So this is where CSS comes in. CSS, Cascading Style Sheets, they're basically like little rules that say, okay, go find a piece of text in the HTML document. You see this document. Go find a piece of text where it says highlights, for example, and based on, whichever element in the document was selected, then I can define, okay, make the font Times New Roman, make the color pink, make the color red, and so on. I'll show you what CSS looks like. So don't worry about what I just did. It was fancy. I just want to have like a visual for now. You can see here, I have two parts to CSS. So one part is what we call a selector, which is basically like, imagine each element on the page, each element in the HTML document, it has some, labels, it has some ID cards. So we can use those labels, those properties, those attributes, that's the fancy word, we can use those to select that element. All you need to know is CSS. One part selects an element in this, big HTML document. And then the other part, it tells, hey, this is the style I want you to apply. So I hope that's giving you a sense of HTML and CSS. HTML was the structure of the website, some fancy stuff going on in there, but basically just like a formatting language. So you have these tags where you surround text and the browser, like Chrome browser, will read that text and convert it into a website. Pretty good. And then alongside that, you have CSS, which is basically what allows you to add visuals and add styles to your website. And the CSS is made of two parts. It has the selector. It's like which element on the page on the website to select, which element in the HTML document. And it has some rules. What do I actually want to go do? Do I want to change the color? Do I want to change the size? Do I want to change the font, etc., etc.? Hopefully that's making sense. Finally, we have JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and JS. JS is for JavaScript. JavaScript is, let's say, more people would consider it a programming language. Some say that CSS is also a programming language, but whatever. So JavaScript is a real programming language. It's a common programming language. And what JavaScript lets the website do is it it responds to things. Okay, it responds to what happens when I click somewhere on the page. It responds to what happens when I scroll on the page. It responds to what happens when I hover over something on the page. It responds to events and it runs specific code. So for example, here, something is happening. The website is doing that somehow. And the way it is doing that is with JavaScript. So when you have, say, like a contact form on your website, well, it uses JavaScript. This is what lets you type in, this is a test subject, and it's what happens, something happens with JavaScript when you click the send button. So it codes what is called the dynamic part of your website. Dynamic meaning X thing happens, do Y thing as a result. Someone submits the contact form, go send me an email as a result. So I hope that gives a little bit of, an intro to what's a website, how it actually works. You have the HTML saying what is on the page. You have the CSS saying how should it look. And finally, you have the JavaScript that says, okay, when this thing happens, then do that thing. So that's the basics of what you need to know for the first question. Now, the second question is, where do I get a website template? A website template is basically, imagine like a pre-built version of the website. It has most of the CSS there. It has like some stock text. It doesn't have your picture, but it has a picture of someone. If I search up website templates, one common place is to go on a site called ThemeForest. It's one among many. And if you want to custom code your website, which again, I said you don't need to do that, but this is what the tutorial is. If you want to custom code the website, you want HTML templates. And, if you're making a website for yourself, which I assume you are right now, then you probably want a personal website like this. So when you go to these sites, they will have website templates for you. If you look at this template, you can see it has a bunch of HTML, CSS, JavaScript. It has that already created for you. So I'm going to click on preview this item, and you can see that something is happening. It's loading a site. So you can see it's a demo, it's not, there's no, point to what it's saying. So it will give you like the structure, the visuals of a site, but then it's up to you to change like the text. It's up to you to change the links. It's up to you to change the images. So this is the point of a website template. So I hope that's making sense. What a website template is, you can get them at Theme Forest, paid ones. You can also go to a site called ColorLib, free HTML templates. You can also probably find some here, probably fewer, but I'm sure you can find some. So these are just two sites that have website templates. Now, keep a few things in mind here. You do not want WordPress templates. So WordPress is a different tool. It's a little bit like Wix, Squarespace, the other tools that I talked about, but to use WordPress requires like a completely different software. So you don't want WordPress templates, you want HTML templates in particular. Another thing to avoid, do not get things labeled like React templates or anything other than an HTML template. So those are a few places you can search for website templates. Cool. What's next? Oh, okay. So those are where you get website templates. And once you get website templates, you're a little bit closer to your website. You'll get an HTML document, just like I showed you earlier. You can press on the page, right click, inspect. If you go to elements on whatever pops up over here, you'll see you'll get all of this HTML. So a bunch of like a text file with HTML in it. You'll get some CSS files, you'll get some JavaScript files, and you'll get, the base website stuff that you want to edit. Next, what you need is you need a domain. So you need like a URL like this so that people can, they can go on the internet and find your website. To get a URL like this is called a domain. It's called a domain name. A domain name you can get from what are called domain name registrars. Basically, just like, you have a government authority somewhere in the country that goes and keeps track of, which addresses are where, this address is in this postal code and, it owes us taxes. Those are the things that they care about. Well, on the internet, people also take care of addresses, but not the addresses of houses. They take care of the addresses of websites. So domains are the addresses of websites. They're what you type into the URL to say, I want to go to www.abc.com, where ABC is the domain name. You do have to pay for these domains, usually. Usually is the keyword. But if you want to get a domain name like this, you go to a domain name registrar. You can, shop around for different domain name registrars. Be careful. They will tell you, okay, this one is just like, $5.99. Some of them will seem a lot cheaper than others, but be very careful to look at how many years you're buying the domain for. Some of them will say, okay, first year is $5.99, but then after that, pay us $25. So just make sure you know what you're signing up for. I personally would recommend that you stick to a few domain name registrars that are a little bit more common. There is GoDaddy, there is Namecheap, there is, you can use tools like Squarespace and Wix, of course. Those will get you your own domain name, same with WordPress. I might recommend Google domains, but and maybe like hosting but aside from these, like try to be a little bit careful. Oh, of course, domain.com. Okay. So aside from these, be a little bit careful what you're getting yourself into. These are like the main ones that most people will be using. So that is, where you can get your domains. For example, I see domain.com. That's one place to get your domains. I don't like domain.com. I'm gonna go to Namecheap. So I'm gonna go to namecheap.com. You can see, you go here, go look for a domain. So maybe maybe I have another website I want to get madhavmalhotra2.com. So I can search for it. And whatever domain you want, there's different extensions. The extensions are like the things at the end of the domain name. So yeah, I can get madhavmalhotra2.com. I can get .ca, .net, .org, .ai, whatever. So I'll show you a bunch of options. You can, go follow through, buy the domain name, etc., etc. So that is how you get domains. And they are, again, the URL that people will type in to go to your website. If you're making a personal website, often people want, first name, or first name, last initial, or whatever. So just keep in mind, you're paying for this and you can't just randomly change it later. So yeah. Next up, what is hosting? So remember what a website is. A website is not like just this thing that you see. A website is HTML files, CSS files, and JavaScript files. So these files, they need to be housed somewhere. And when someone types in like a domain name into the browser, well, somewhere on the internet, a computer has to say, okay, get the files for my website and go send it to, the computer that just requested to see it, that requested to see the website. So that's what hosting is. A hosting provider is basically a company that will hold on to your files, your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files for your website. And whenever someone types in the domain name into the browser, they will send those files to that computer so that the other person can see your website. So that's what hosting is. Again, oftentimes hosting is paid. Usually like those same, domain name registrars, you can go to them and they will also offer you hosting. Personally, I've never bought hosting. I use GitHub Pages, which allows you to host most of the websites that you would be using, allows you to host them for free. So I would recommend this as a hosting option if you're looking to save some money. It is a little bit more complicated, but we can talk about it later. Also, advantage of GitHub Pages, it's one of the few ways that you can get a domain name for free. I won't get into other ways because they're a little bit, let's say, suspicious. But this is one of the few ways, and the restriction is that you always have a github.io. So this is like the only extension you can get. With other providers, you can get like .com, but with GitHub Pages, it has to be a .github.io. So it has to be one of these domains. So that's a restriction, but anyways, you have these companies that provide hosting and domains. You're going to need to buy those or use one of the free options like GitHub Pages. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so now let's say you got your website templates. How do you go and actually change that code? What if you don't want a strong piece of text or text? Let's say you have a strong text, it's in bold. Let's say you don't want it in strong anymore, you don't want it bolded anymore. How do you go and change the HTML and CSS and JavaScript so that you instead, just have a regular piece of text? To do this, I will first of all go get a free HTML template just so I can show you. Give me a little sec, and let's see if we can find something quickly. Oh, Webflow. Sorry, I just have to listen to me making random comments. Oh, cool. A restaurant's website template. Sounds good. Now, is this a Webflow template though? Or is it like... No, it is a Webflow template. Okay. Not here, not here. Request continues. Oh, by the way, Webflow is just another thing like WordPress. So if you wanted to use the template, you would need to actually use Webflow, like a custom piece of software. So I'm gonna avoid that. You can see a bunch of these website templates. They are, specific parts of the page. So just the contact section or, just the about us section. So we don't want these either. However, this looks like a full website. Let's see. Can I get this website template? Let's try it out. Let's see. I've never seen this website. Nice pages. Maybe I'm getting a virus now. Oh boy, that doesn't look like what I want. Okay, don't do that. Don't do that. uh, let's see. Where else can I get website templates? We're searching. Request continues. Looks cool. All right, let's see what this is. All right, let's see. Okay, this looks a little bit suspicious. However, I think it's working. So when you download a website template, usually you want to get a zip folder. Just be careful where you're downloading them. So if you're maybe not as experienced with websites, don't go around the internet downloading random templates. Maybe stick to Theme Forest. That might be a better idea. So let's look. I have this template. So now when you open up a template, you'll get a zip file like this. As you can see, there's a bunch of HTML files. You see .html. There's also, if you go into assets, there's some CSS files. There's some JavaScript files. So as you can see, it's got pretty good stuff. You have some images that are going to be on the website. By the way, that's something you need to note. When you have an image, you actually need the file to be along with the template. So I'm going to click on one of these. You can see for me, it says like just click on it and it'll open it up in Microsoft Edge because Edge is a browser. It can open up HTML files. It can also do the same for Chrome or Safari. You might have to click and say open with like Edge or Chrome or Safari, whatever you're using. But if I open this up here, yay, so I have a website. Yay, first step. So how would you go about actually editing this website template? By the way, it doesn't look very modern, but whatever. We're just playing around for now. So remember what I said, an HTML template, it is just, a bunch of text. So you could actually, if you wanted, if you opened it with, say, a notepad or any other, just text editor, what you would see is, what I showed you earlier in the browser. It's just like a bunch of HTML tags like this. And if you were so inclined, for whatever reason, you could go and literally make a change in this. Like you could change the text on here, and next time you load up the website, you would see something different. So for example, in this head tag, remember that's what these are called, HTML tags. You have a closing and an opening tag. So just like this, remember? Strong, bold, and then slash strong. You see this slash? So that's the closing tag. And you put the text that you want in the middle. And then the type of tag tells the HTML document, what kind of thing do you want here? Like, do you want bolded text? You might do strong. If you want italicized text, you have this M tag, M for emphasized. If you wanted to have a header, large chunk of text, then you could do H1. So that's like the biggest header. So anyways, I'm not going to explain like all HTML because this is just like how do you modify your website. So anyways, you have these different tags, the beginning tag, and then you see over here we have the closing tag, and then there can be other tags in the middle. You see here how we have like the title of the page. It says about Moderna Bootstrap template. So if I click on this, if I open it up, you see in the tab, it says about dash Moderna Bootstrap template. So I can change the title over here. I can say, what should I say? Madhav was here. Now I can save the file. Yeah. And when I reload this time, you see the text changed. So that's how you edit an HTML template. You need to change the text in the file. Now this looks really messy, okay? I would not want to go and edit, this file with text. So do not do that. Just note, when you're editing an HTML template, that's all you're doing. You're changing the text because you don't want to like change any of the functionality. You just want to change, what's on the page. So maybe like put your name here or put your image here and so on. So instead of using like a text editor like this, what I'd recommend you use is something called, well, it's a code editor, but the specific one I'd recommend is called VS Code, Visual Studio Code. It's the main code editor. You don't need to use it. There are other ones. There's like Sublime Text. There's like Atom. There's other code editors, but I really like VS Code, Visual Studio Code. So you could go and actually, just like I right-clicked here and I did open with, instead of Notepad, you can see over here, I already have Visual Studio Code installed. You can go install Visual Studio Code, download. Yeah, you could do that if you wanted. And yeah, Windows, Mac, Linux, you have your options. I already have done that, so what I can do is I can just go over to about.html and open with Visual Studio Code. So when I do that, it will, again, it's just a text file. But this time you see it's a lot nicer. Yeah, it's a lot nicer to look at. You've got things color coded. Still, like it looks pretty complicated, but it's okay. We can deal with it. It's a lot better than the text. So now we have this in restricted mode. Restricted mode means it won't let you edit the code, I believe. Let's just try and turn this off if you get this feature. I don't know. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so you have this here. And again, you can see now I can change the site's name. And this time it will be a little bit easier. So again, I just pressed Control S, by the way, or you can go File, Save As. And I just, again, edited the code. You can see there's an edit in the actual website. So this is what you're going to be doing all throughout, and some things that Visual Studio Code does that make this easier. First thing is actually highlighting, the text so you know what you're looking at. Another thing is you can hide unnecessary sections. You can see you click here next to a opening tag, and then it will expand and contract all of the stuff here. I will explain the structure of a basic HTML file. In the head, you have basically settings about the HTML document. So for example, what name to show up in the tab. You probably want to edit the name, so you want to look for a tag called a title. You can remember that, right? Title of the page, title of the document. That determines which text shows up in the tab. The only other thing that you might want to change is the fav icon. The fav icon is basically, this little image. So you see over here, I have a squiggly line. Over here, I have a, B. So you have these different images in the tabs. Aside from that, you don't need to adjust. You don't touch anything in here. So you can just, close this and there you go, you're done. Next, you have the body. This is where like the main meat of the page lies. Everything that you see on the screen here, not, some weird stuff in the tab, all of this is in the body. So again, the body just has, different tags in it, and you can hide this as you want. So if you hide this, then you can see the last thing is the HTML tag. So the HTML tag like encloses everything. Now I want to take a second to talk about these things that you see. These weird things that are like, what? Like you have this opening tag, but then you have some other text in here before like the closing, brackets here. What is this? So these things, they're called attributes. What they do is they specify certain settings for that tag. For example, I'll give you one example. There is something called a anchor tag. Basically it has links here. So links here. So when you have an anchor tag, remember the stuff that's actually showing up on the page is in the body. So I'm going to go open up the body and I'm going to put an anchor tag like this, first thing in the page. So I'm going to refresh here. I hope it is somewhere on the page. So, it might be, up here somewhere. I'm not sure where it is. Okay, let me search. For now, I'm just going to search this. I'll show you a better way, but let me just Control F over here, voila, tatum, whatever that is, and right before that, I'll put my a link here. So a is an anchor tag. Anchor is again just a link. So I'm gonna reload the file again, and you see we have the text link here, but there's nothing to click. There's no it doesn't behave like a regular link. Like it doesn't behave like this. Why is that? So the reason for that. Oh, by the way, sorry I didn't explain that. You can press Control F to get this search bar. Control F, Command F, whatever it is for you. So just like you search in a Google Docs, same thing. So why do we not have a link here? Well, it's because to create a link, well, you need a URL. What are you linking to here? So this is an example of where you might use an attribute. What you need here is an attribute called href, which is hyperlink reference. Don't worry about what that means. Just, memorize. Href, okay, you can do that. Anyways, let's say I do an href and I, put in the URL for Google. Yeah. So I'm going to do that here. And I pressed Control S again, or you can go and, save if you want the changes to show up in your website. Reload. And now you can see I can actually click on this link and it will do something. So that's what I mean by it stores data. So certain tags in HTML, like this a link anchor tag is for links. It needs an href. It's where you actually put in the link. There's always, other attributes. I'm not going to show you every attribute, but that's one of the basic ones that you'll need to know if you want to put any links on your site. Here's another one. So you have this image tag. It has images. Now you can see here this image tag, it does not require a closing tag. You don't need to do /image. It's a weird one like that. Usually there are a few like it, but not too many. So don't worry about why. It's just weird HTML stuff. Remember, it's just like, it's arbitrary. You know, why does asterisk make this bolded? I don't know. Someone just decided it. So anyways, you have this image tag. It does not require a closing tag, as you see here. And you see this image has a specific attribute called the source. The source is it's what you expect. It's the source of the image. It's like a link to the image. So over here, I can actually find some URL on the internet. So let me search up cat image. And I can take that URL and put it in the source so that, oh, I shouldn't do that on Unsplash. Hey, don't do that. Okay, Unsplash does not like it when you link to its images. Just out of courtesy, we don't want some Unsplash coming after me. You can right click on the image and copy image link. And now if I put this in here, so see, it's just a URL, you know, https dot 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 whatever. Now again, I press Ctrl S to reload, and I'm going to reload my page. And you see I have a giant cat image here. So that's another example of what is called an attribute. Now, I hope that gives you a little bit more clarity when you're looking at all this weird stuff. You know, you have these tags and they have attributes. The attributes are pieces of data that the tags need in order to work. So there we are. One very, let's just, wrap up these attributes for now. So one very special attribute is what's called a class attribute. A class attribute is one of those labels I mentioned earlier. Remember I said the CSS selectors, they identify an element, a tag on the page by using a label. So a class is one of those labels. The other common label is ID. And you can think, yeah, label ID makes sense. So I could put in ID my special image. Yeah. So these are useful for working with CSS that we will do later. But just in explaining these, now you get a lot more of an idea of what is going on here. You have these tags, they have HTML. You have attributes for the tags, which have specific pieces of data that are used by each tag, like the source of an image. And you have these class and ID attributes, which are very useful for CSS. We'll talk about it later. The last thing you might be wondering about, what's this green stuff? It's basically like a comment. Comment just means, hey, I'm showing this to you here in the code, but it's not going to be on the page. So if you see this specific syntax is what these markings are called, like this means bold. Okay, so the syntax for bold is put two asterisks around your word. So the syntax for a comment is you have a less than sign, then a exclamation point, exclamation mark, two dashes, and you see VS Code was smart. It already completed the rest for me because you have like this arrow at the end. Whatever I put up here, it's not going to go on the website. I won't be able to see anything over here that says about section. So this is just for you to see. So hopefully that gives you an idea for what you're seeing on the page. Yeah. And now you're probably like, okay, well, like I have some idea here. So there's this like voluptatum thing. So if I see like a voluptatum up here, then maybe I want to change this to my name is Madhav. Okay, let me Control F voluptatum, and then like you go and change that stuff. Yeah. So you're like, okay, my name is Madhav. So then you can do that if you want. Go and change one thing in the code and then see, okay, Control F, where does this go, where does that go, and so on and so on. Now, I want to recap here, where we're at. So where do you edit your HTML template? You edit it in some kind of code editor. I would recommend VS Code. What are the HTML tags? Well, it's what we've been talking about throughout, which is that the tags are just formats, for the billionth time, just formats. Okay, this means take the text in the middle and bold it in a messaging app, put the 2 asterisks around, versus in HTML you have these tags which you put around text so that you can bold them. You have the slash, forward slash for the closing tag, and you have different types of tags. And now we're talking about how do we edit the HTML. So I showed you a few things about the HTML tags, the fact that you have to have, the opening and closing tag usually. So A and then /A, that's for a link. In the opening tag, you put in a space and then you type in like some kind of attribute name. That's just like a setting that you can set for the tag. Like we showed earlier, the href is for a link. By the way, note that you need to surround the tags with these quotation marks. So this is the setting. You set it equal to the value of the setting. Hopefully that's making sense. I'm going to remove the fancy code from the screen for a second just to give you a few basic tags. By the way, here's a cool feature about VS Code. You see on the side, you might be able to see, like I can preview all the code and I can find the section that I want. So for example, over here I can see like the code looks different, and over here like there's probably a bunch of differences. So I can quickly scan the file to see what I want on the side here. Anyway, so I have this blank screen for a second just to show a few basic tags. So the ones that you just really, really need to know. Again, this is not a full HTML tutorial. The first one, the most basic one, is the paragraph tag, P. It just has basic text. You can take a P, text, some text here. By the way, I'm going to go up here. I'm going to highlight this all, and I'm going to just press Control Shift V. So I can, copy paste as you'd expect in any Google Docs like editor. So here I can put in tags within tags. So let's say I wanted to bold some basic text, that part, then I surround that in these strong strong tags. So then, you have this tag. If I wanted to italicize something, then let me go up here again, copy this, and just make like a bunch. So over here you can put in like a M tag, remember, for emphasized. That will italicize this part, basic text. Sometimes you might see like these span thingies. Don't worry too much about them. They just have text. So your big job in a HTML template is not really to add new tags. You just want to change the content of the tag. So just in case you see a span tag, it's just like this. So those are like the basic text tags. Then you have headings. So you have H1 through H6. So H1 is the biggest heading. H6 is the smallest. I'm going to copy paste this a bunch. I think that's enough. Here's a cool feature about VS Code. I believe it's the Alt key, you hold Alt and then you click in a new location. Now you have two cursors, so you can edit two things at the same time. So here I just pressed delete and then two after, and then it just edited two places at once. Here I just pressed the down key, it moved the two cursors down at the same time. So H3, H4, H5, H6, oh, there's no H7. By the down key I meant the down arrow on my keyboard. So you can put in biggest, less big. We have still less big. We have getting small, really small, and smallest. Yeah, so these are just headers. You might see them around. That's just for text stuff. You also have buttons and links. So buttons are gonna have some text in the middle. So click here. They're gonna have some text like that. And then they're gonna have like an src, which is a source. Source is again a place for you to put a link. So you could put in https://google.com. And then when I would click on the button, it would just pull up google.com. Over here, I have an image tag. Here, the source is different. Now it's like, where do I get the image from? So I gave you an example of a cat image source somewhere on the web. Could go back and get it, but I'm not gonna go repeat that, okay? You get the idea. So just, you can put in URLs here. So you can have an image, https some sites.com/some image.png. This one is a special one. It doesn't need a closing tag. Also, you have the anchor tag. So what the link text is in the middle, and then the href. It's not a source this time, it's an href. I don't know why, it's just random as always. So the href could be, again, back to our friend google.com. Yeah. So those are basically what you're gonna need most of the time. There is maybe one last thing, which is you can have what are called unordered lists, which is weird HTML speak for bullet list, because why would you want to say bullet list when you can say unordered list? I don't know. An unordered list, you can have like the opening and closing tag, and then you have like these li tags, which are list elements. So first bullet points, I'm going to copy this a bunch. And then these are, second, third, fourth, and so on. So these are going to be like bullets. I'll show you how all these things look in just a second. These are going to be like bullets, like those circle bullets. You also have ordered lists, which are kind of like, again, these bullets, but now they're numbered. They're ordered, they're numbered. So I'm just gonna temporarily take all this stuff. These are the basic tags. You don't really need to memorize it. You'll get the hang of it. And as always, you can search things up. Speaking of, I should show you where you want to search these things up. Anyways, let me say go here and paste a bunch of stuff. Yeah, I just pressed save again, Control S, and it automatically indented the tags. You want to have like these tags indented. VS Code will do it for you. Just makes it easier to read, which tag is inside which other one. By the way, these div tags, divs are kind of like the boxes that everything else goes in. So like you have a div here. It's like the box for this image. It's where the image is housed. Anyways, let me open up the website. I'm gonna reload. Might look a bit weird, but you can see. Okay, so that was there from before. Here we have like paragraph with the strong tag. This is some basic text, M tag, that was the italicized, span, H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. You can see, okay, sketchy button. Oh, I don't think that works. Let's see what I did wrong afterwards. Let's see, where's my button? Where's my button? Visit somesite.com. Oh, apparently that's an actual image that are randomly typed up. Oh, so yeah, it went to somesite.com/someimage.png and yeah, apparently that's an actual image. Cool. That's cool. I didn't expect that. So that's the image you can see. Cool. We have the link. Okay, this is working. You know, the link goes to a new page. And I'm not sure what I did wrong with the bullet button. I probably forgot something. Here's where you go for debugging. So I would strongly recommend you don't get to the stage where you need debugging. Try not to mess around with the templates and add your own tags too much, because if you want to do that, you actually want to learn HTML instead of like this, you know, do this, do that, and like da 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 da. Ignore all that stuff. You know, this is an impromptu tutorial. But anyways, if you want to go, I would say W3 Schools. It has more beginner-friendly resources than some other things you'll find. Definitely, you don't want to go to Mozilla, Mozilla Docs. These are very complicated and hard to read. Don't go here. You see developer.mozilla.org. Don't go there. Very complicated and hard to read. I would also say there's this site called Stack Overflow. It's mainly for more complicated questions, but it's just like questions that other people have. So say Stack Overflow, image not loading, HTML. So I have an issue, I can just, type that up, and then someone else will have asked that question, and then, people will go answer them. It's a little bit harder to understand what's going on, so I'd say don't go here. Hopefully you don't need to. So I'd personally recommend W3S Schools for like simple resources. So it'll explain things simply. A clickable button is marked up as follows. So we have button, click me. What does it do? Let's see. So it has like these examples that you can see. You can click try yourself, and it'll show you, how things look, etc., etc. So don't worry too much about it. Green, blue, green, blue. Why is the source not working? I'm just gonna search for source. Is it href? No. Okay. Huh. Well, apparently there's no source. Button source, really? Oh well. So you can see I screwed something up, but that's okay. We always screw things up. Yeah, we always screw things up, so don't worry about it. we can ignore that part. Let's see, what else can you do with a button? I'm gonna control F button. Maybe it'll actually show you something else useful. Are there any other buttons? No buttons on this page. Oh, well, okay. So never mind the button for now, but these are some basic tags that you might need. Hopefully this is helpful. Now, for the most part, though, you don't need to create your own tags because it's an HTML template. It has tags for you. So you see h3 tag, div is like, again, the box around everything else. You have /p, ul, dot, dot, dot. You see these class thingies there for the CSS, remember? We're going to talk about that later, so don't worry. But aside from that, you can see, okay, I'm getting things. So one last thing here. One thing that might make it easy for you to edit your site is instead of like, oh, Control F, find me lorem ipsum in that so that I can somehow like figure out what I want to edit. Let's say I scroll down and I'm like, okay, Sarah Wilson. I don't want Sarah Wilson on here. I want someone else. So one thing that I could do is, of course, like Control F, Sarah Wilson, but I will show you instead how you can actually use what are called Chrome developer tools, or if I'm using Edge, so Edge developer tools. They help you, mess around with websites. So you can right-click, inspect elements. You see these complicated thing pops up. Don't worry about most of it. Just go to the elements section. Now you see here, you have all of the HTML that you saw, like the code, in Chrome DevTools. This is like a temporary sandbox where you can mess around with whatever you want. So let's say I wanted to, fix this spelling mistake. You're gonna get a lot of spelling mistakes on websites, trust me. Let's say I wanted to fix this. So I could go, hover around different things here and see, okay, wait, it was highlighted right here. Okay, so when I go here, you can see I can close and open this div tag. Again, that's the box. And then, in the box, you have this section where, okay, so this is not the right place. I want to go here, so I can, again, open this. And then there's an H2. I'm like, yeah, that's what I need, an H2, because I'm looking to change a header. Then you can double click on here and you can change what it says. So I'm going to say testimonials spelled correctly. And you can see now when I press enter, so I just double click on the text. When I press enter, I'll see the new change. Be careful, okay? It's not changed the code. In the code, it's still going to say testimonials. Testimonials. There we are. Testimonials. There we are. So it's still going to say that, but over here, this is for like just previewing different changes, usually for CSS. Often that's where you preview the changes, but that's where you want to change something on the fly and just say, okay, whatever, I wanted, this to be blue in color instead of black, but it's things like that. So this is very useful. Now, one thing, yeah, so keep in mind it's not making a permanent change. The other thing that's useful is you see this button over here. So it might, it's in the top left, and it says select an element in the page to inspect it. It looks like a, triangle with a rectangle in the background. If you click on this, and then you hover over any, element in the page. So let's say I hovered over this. See how in the, well, I can't point with my mouse. See in the bottom left of my screen, as I go over different elements, it automatically expands those elements for me. So let's say I wanted to change specifically this email, I can go and, hover over the email with this. I click on it and it'll open up the part of my code that has the email. So it's helpful for finding, which part of the code do I want to edit. So that's a helpful thing right there. Okay, so I want to go back to my document. I want to find strong email colon, like let's just say I was having trouble, so that might help a bit. Yeah, so that's how, you might want to use that. Another thing is if you don't see it on the bottom, it might just be on the right or the left. There are these three dots on the top right side of the dev tools. That's what they're called, developer tools. If you click on those, then you can change the dock side. So right now it's at the bottom. I could have it on the left. I could have it on the right. I can do whatever I want. So yeah, I can also press on the close thing to close it. Anyways, so that's useful. I think that does most of the things that you'd want to do. So in terms of editing just the structure, you want to go and change some of these links. Maybe you don't need like a team link because it's a personal website. So you're like, okay, go to like nav ID, nav bar, like that section, and then it's near there. So I'm gonna go nav ID equals nav bar. Nav is like it's a nav bar. It's the different links you can click in a site. That's that tag. You can see it's just like a list of different links. If I don't want, this weird drop down, whatever thing this is, I can just, delete this. And I don't want like a team. I don't want services. I'll just say skills.html. By the way, this is a link too. I'll quickly explain that. But anyways, you see how you go, from the website to the code and, you're making these changes all the time. Now, I do want to explain one thing one thing here, which is that these links, you see these hrefs and these sources of the images. Let's see. You see how they don't start with HTTPS. So HTTPS : // that is the start of any URL on the internet. I'm simplifying a bit, but just go with me here. So when you are, taking a link from the internet, an image URL from the internet, like some site /some image.png, then you are going to start off, this source or, the href, you're going to start it off with https : // Yeah. However, notice here that these sources, they don't start with HTTPS. And now VS Code is doing something special that VS Code can do. You saw like a pop-up, follow the link, control plus click. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to hold down control and I'm going to click. You see what happens? So it loads the image. And what it's actually saying here is that the image is this is called a file path. It's giving me like a path to the image in the folder. So, it's in my downloads folder and then the template name, you see? Downloads folder, template name. It's telling me the same thing, here is the folder and the file, where can you find it? So you go Modena, assets, image about .jpg. So let me go in the folder. So assets, image, and then, about .jpg. So here you can see it's the same image. So this is called a file path. It's not called a URL. The reason it's called a file path is because you're directly storing the file, the image, on your local computer. As you saw, it was in my, it was on my computer. It was in one of my folders. So that is why it does not start with HTTPS. Now, it's very important here what it actually starts with. I'll probably link a resource to this in the notes in the description to explain, how do you actually put in the right URL path to get the file that you want. But I will show you an easy way to do it. So over here, you see Explorer. So Explorer is kind of like, it will show you all of the files in a folder. So you want to go here in VS Code. You want to open a folder, and in my case, I want to open the Modena folder. And when I do that, it'll like reload and do some stuff. But yes, I trust the files, by the way. Say that, otherwise it won't let you edit properly. So yes, I trust the authors, ... And now you see in the Explorer, if I click on it, it will show me all of the files in the HTML template. So I can click this file, which is where I was. I can, put this away if I wanted to, and then I'm back to editing as I was. So that's fine. Or if I wanted to go to another file, I could, just open up blog.html again, HTML file, and so on and so on. I can open up all of these. Now, if I wanted to say, go from the about.html page to the services.html page, how do I do that? Well, I need to have a link to that page. And there are certain rules for how you format these links. So I guess I can explain them here. When you say // something, So you can see VS Code is automatically showing me like the options here. / means in the current folder. So I'll show you again in the folder structure. So I'm in Modena, this folder over here. I'm in this folder. So / lets me access all of these files in the folder. Now let's say it's like / services.html. You can see it's auto-completing, which means my file path is valid. The reason it is because there's a services.html in this folder. Now, in contrast, assets is shown as a dropdown, but remember, it's just a folder. To get to assets, a file in here, and then, a file in images, what I would need to do is first say /, which is the current folder. Yeah, all of this. Then in the current folder, I want to select the assets folder, and then the image folder, and then I can select a file. So here's how I do that. /, that's the current folder, assets. You can see it's auto-completing. Then image, yeah, and then, the file I want. So VS Code is pretty useful. It helps you write these file paths. Now, notice that within, each folder, you have these forward slashes. That's, how you specify different folders, etc. In this case, this doesn't make sense. You can't link to, well, you can link to a file, but you want to link to a HTML document. So you want to put in like services.html. Remember, that's like the structure of the web page. So that is how you could, if you were following the rules, then that is how you could go about getting to a particular document. Now, let's say for some reason, for whatever reason, you were, don't touch that. Do not touch that, by the way. Forms, do not touch that. Are there any? Okay, do not ever touch the JS, the JavaScript files, or like any PHP files. That is like complicated code. So yeah, you're just like, what is going on here? Don't touch this. That's the lesson of the day. Imagine for some reason that I was, I had a HTML file here in the JavaScript folder for no reason. I clicked on this new file button and now I can create a new file. So I'm going to create new.html. Now, let's say for whatever reason, I just had, a anchor link here, and I needed to link to, back to about.html. So now you can see, well, how do I do that? It's like / means in the current folder, but there's nothing here. Yeah, that makes sense. What you need is .. /. / means in the folder right above. And then you can do another .. / to get to the folder above that. So .. / means get out of the JavaScript folder and just stay in the assets folder. Yeah, and you can see all of these folders within the asset folder. They're there. Then I can do .. / again, and now I'm out of the assets folder and I'm in this Modena folder. You see, Modena folder. And now I can go services.html. So that's how I would get a file path to services. Now, this is like kind of messy and, I don't like it. So first of all, I'm going to delete this because I don't need it. Second of all, don't worry, you don't have to do this because guess what? VS Code has got your back again. So let's say I need to get an image about .jpg. I don't like it. I want to get another image. So I'm going to images. I'm going to get hero-bg.jpg. Here's how I could do it. I could right click and I could use this option, copy relative path. So I could right click, press copy relative path, and what VS Code does, it just copies it for me and I just, paste it in and there you go. Yay, everything's working. Be careful, it might have like these backward slashes, just make them forward slashes. But aside from that, hey, it's working. So VS Code is helping us once again. So now you know pretty much what to do. You know all the header tags, you know the paragraph tags, you know the image tags, you know the link tags, you know how to set the image sources, you know how to set the links, you know about these comments, you know about how to set these attributes, which are, you know, different pieces of data. And you know that, you know, this class and those ID things, those are mainly attributes for CSS. So with this knowledge, you can basically do all of the editing you want for your website. It might take a little bit of time, but you could do it. You could get through it. Just have to change some sections. You know, I already removed some links up here. So now you see I have fewer links. So I'm already, you know, getting closer. Instead of Modena, again, I would press this icon over here and then, you know, hover over this, find where it is. Okay, it's in like header A, H1, something or the other. So I would like find, you know, Moderna somewhere. Nope, not this. How about header somewhere? There we are. So Moderna, here we are. So no, it's not Moderna, it's Madhav. And then, you know, you keep on going and going and going, and, you know, it takes some time, but you'll get where you need to. So that is the basics of how you edit HTML. Yay, we're almost done. Because there's one last major thing. By the way, here's a rule, just do not touch the JavaScript, okay? If you're watching this tutorial, you probably don't know what you're doing. Not to be rude. You can learn what you're doing. Just don't touch the JavaScript. Oh, and one more thing. Before you edit anything, make a copy of the Modena, like make a copy of the file template, just in case you mess up something and you need to like revert back all the changes, make a copy of the template, just in case, okay? So you want to do that, make a copy. And you don't want to touch the JavaScript because that is the easiest way that you're going to break something. So do not touch the JavaScript, okay? Um, you're going to see JavaScript in two ways. You're going to see it in .js files. You're also going to see it in script files because, hey, JavaScript, do not touch these, okay? Do not touch. No, don't touch it. You're going to break your website, I'm telling you, okay? Don't touch it. Don't touch any of this stuff. So that covers JavaScript. Now we have one last thing left, which is the CSS. There's an easy way to CSS and there's a hard way to CSS, okay? I will teach you the easy way to CSS. Don't worry that you don't understand anything. Okay, okay. Let's do a little bit of the basics. So CSS, remember, it had two parts. What parts did it have? It had selectors, which elements, which tags to apply the rules to. It has selectors and it has rules. The CSS rules say, how do I change the visual style? The CSS selectors say, you know, which elements do I apply the styles to? So I'll show you the easy way to edit CSS. First of all, notes. When you are editing CSS, there is a CSS file. It will be under like usually assets/CSS, or, you know, maybe it's out here, but you have a CSS file. Don't touch any of this stuff. Just scroll all the way down to the bottom. And if you want to add like your own CSS, do it here. Don't touch anything else. Just do not touch anything else. So if you wanted to add your own CSS, you could do it there. Now, I will give you an example of how do I figure out what to type in here. So remember, you know, this is again still a text document. I could edit it in a notepad editor if I wanted. I just wouldn't get fancy stuff like this. So here's a common thing. Here's the first common thing. When you hover over certain elements, remember you have this button, inspect elements, and you can hover over certain elements. You can see the properties already being applied, like the color, the font, the padding, etc. Let's say I hovered over this navbar element. I didn't like the blue. So I can see over there already that there's like a background color of hashtag 1E4356. That's like a hex code color. I'm not going to explain what a hex code color is. Just search up, you know, hex code color picker, and you can get a string of numbers and letters that represents a specific color. So you have the background there, which is this blue. You don't like it in blue. So now I'm gonna, first of all, I'm just gonna remember this. I'm gonna be like, okay, background, hashtag 1E4356, 1E4356. So now I'm gonna go search for, I'm gonna press Control F in this styles.css file, hashtag 1E4356. There we are. So now I can go and change all of these. You see, VS Code is giving me like a color picker. Let's say I want like a pink. There we go. There's like a pink. And then here's another thing I can do. So let's say I'd really liked, this new color. I can copy this and I can replace it throughout the website. Here's how I'm going to do that. I'm going to press either this drop down, or I can press Control H, Command H, whatever. And now I can go throughout the documents. Don't press this button. Do not press Replace All. Press this button, Replace, okay? So wherever I see the old color, I'm going to replace it with a new color. Over here, replace, 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 frick. Okay, done. Okay, let's see. What does it look like now? It's probably not going to look good. Oh, yeah, nice and pink. Oh, now we have an issue. So you see, when I scroll down, now the color changes slightly. It's like a different color. Like it wasn't transparent at all. This is a little bit transparent. And like these things, there's still a bunch of blue, but oh, okay, these buttons are working. So what I gradually do bit by bit is like, figure out, okay, I don't like this footer color. What color is this footer color? There we are. It's 0D2735. I could keep doing that and keep doing that, but I don't need to memorize these things. So just click on whichever element you're interested in. You'll see that there's a part of the DevTools that has styles. And you can see there's some complicated stuff in here that you don't need to worry about, but you can see there is some selector that is, getting to this element. And here is the specific CSS attributes that codes for that. It says make the background this color. So how would you get rid of that? Well, one thing you could do is you could just change it in here. So I think I still have we still have that old color copied in. So you can just double click on these properties and their values, and you can change it like that. Never, just keep in mind it's not going to change like the code actually. It's just changing what you see on the web page. If you want to change the code, note it gives you the line number. Okay, it says styles.css 1889. What that's saying is go to line 1889, which is here, and there's the specific CSS rule that I need to change. That's what these are called, rules. So now I can replace it in the CSS file, and now it will actually be permanent. So I can reload, and this time the change will actually be permanent. So that's another useful thing. Click on the elements, look at the styles. You might have to finesse a little bit and navigate around and like see. I believe there's like this right arrow where you can figure out like which tabs there are, but usually you'll see the styles. And with that, you should be able to now edit a lot more. You can change styles, you can change basic colors. And that's usually the most that you need to change in terms of styles, change the colors. So like maybe you want to change the colors here. You click on that, you're like, okay, the color is being defined here. I can see like a hex code. Again, that's the numbers and the text that encodes for a certain color. It's in styles.cs.832. Okay, go to line 832. I'm going to use the right scroller because it's faster. All right, here we are, 832, and here we go. Here it is. So that's going to be useful for you. I'll teach you one last thing. You shouldn't really have to use it. Like, I don't recommend that you edit CSS, okay? This is just like the basics. I'm not teaching you much about the selectors. I'm not teaching you much about the rules. It's just like editing color, because that's the main thing. One other thing that you might need is to change the font. It's gonna be a little bit hard, so don't worry too much about it, okay? It would be much nicer if you could just leave it. But if you do want to change the fonts, your options are a little bit limited, I have to tell you. Okay, I have to tell you that they're a little bit limited. I might leave a tutorial on what's called Google Fonts. Google Fonts has a lot of fonts that you can use, but you have to do some weird stuff to be able to use them. You have to like import them in your CSS file and stuff like that. So try and avoid it. You can be satisfied. This is good enough. It's a good enough font. So don't worry too much about fonts. You may want to adjust the font size. The basic CSS rules you can figure out. Yeah, I just clicked on this with the inspect element. You see, I see a rule over here that says font size. I want to change the size. Okay, font size makes sense. So then I can adjust this to like 48 pixels, and now there you go. It's bigger. So aside from that, try not to mess around with the CSS too much. You're not it's just like, just change the text, change the colors, leave the rest, you know. So that is basically how we edit a website. Note, if you have a website, then you probably just want like a few pages. Oh, by the way, you can change these images too in the same way. So I'm gonna, again, right click, inspect. I can open up the inspector, and I'm gonna click on like this background and see like, hey, how do I get that background thing to change? Looks kind of weird. Anyways, let's see. How about this? Is this the background? I'm gonna like open these different types for a bit until I find something. Yeah, that looks messy. I don't like that. But it has to be in this section, because you see when I hover over this now, it's not, in the image. The outline is showing at the bottom. So you can see this section is where I need to be. I can click on this section, and is there an image in the background? So I'm gonna, look. Nope, I don't see anything about an image. How about here? Image in the background? Nope, I don't see anything about an image. Okay, let's keep going. Image? No? Really? Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We are just gonna default to the tried true and tested approach. Control F. Find image. And you can go through a bunch of images. I'm sure you'll find your one eventually. Okay, we went too far, so we want another image. Hey, there's only 8 images on the page, so not too bad. Where's the image? Okay, so sometimes it's not going to be cooperative with you. I think the reason is that it has a CSS attribute called a background image. Background. Oh yeah, here it is. So it's in this thingy after. That's weird. That's bizarre. Anyways, don't worry too much about it. It's just a CSS selector at the end of the day. You can see the line that it's at. Style.css at 287. You go there. 287. You go here, and you're like, okay, I don't like that image. I want a new image. I want my website to be perfect. So you can make your website perfect. You scroll around. Oh, URL, image. Okay, that's probably what I want to change. Be a little bit careful when you're changing this. But as ever, you can, go to the image and just copy. Remember, you want to copy the relative path so that you don't mess up the file path. If you go to the website templates and you specifically go to readme.txt, oftentimes it will give you some information like, here's how you edit the icons if you want to edit those icons. Here's like the name that you put in the class for the class to work. Sometimes there's also like documentation. Usually not as much for these free templates, but if you buy something off of Theme Forest, then you can actually talk to the author and get help. You can ask them, how do I change the icons? It probably has like this readme.txt that has a little bit more information where you can see, okay, this is how I change icons, etc., etc. So anyways, this was a tutorial full of how do I change, basic CSS, basic HTML, and how do I use Chrome DevTools to help me in my endeavors. I will link some resources if you want to go deeper. I will link some resources on basic CSS. I will link some resources on basic HTML. I will link a few hosting sites, domain registrars, all the links that you might need, places where you can get the themes, etc., etc. So with that being said, I'm going to stop rambling now so that I don't go on forever. Bye.